Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Was Never Turned to Devil and Was Married to Akeno Himejima movie. Before we start, please go support RevansStories for writing that awesome fanfic. In a different world filled with peace and prosperity, Akeno Himejima and Issei Hyoudou never became servants of Rias Gremory. Instead, the two of them became high school lovers and eventually ended up getting married and having kids. Witness the two of them on their epic journey of parenthood. Life 1-1. Laying in bed sound asleep was Issei Hyoudou, a 28-year-old man with somewhat long spiky brown hair and light brown eyes. He had a small stubble that was needing to be shaved as well. Lying right next to him deep in her sleep was his high school crush and wife Akeno Himejima, or now Akeno Hyoudou. She had long raven black hair and amethyst purple eyes. Lying in a crib right in front of their king-size bed was their 1-year-old son Kurenai. He had inherited his mother's purple eyes and his father's brown hair. Unbeknownst to the high school lovers, their son wasn't asleep. In fact, he had just woken up from his sleep and started crying because he was hungry. Akeno, in response to hearing her child start to cry, began to stir from her sleep and mumbled to her husband. Issei, Kurenai is awake. She would have gotten up to take care of Kurenai, but tonight was Issei's night to take care of Kurenai should he wake up in the middle of the night. Issei didn't respond to his wife at all. He didn't make a moan of annoyance or a groan at all. Instead, he continued to lightly snore and dream about whatever he was dreaming about. Akeno, now starting to become slightly annoyed that she was awoken from her sleep, did what any loving wife would do to her husband. Issei, get up. She kicked him off of the bed. He cried out right before hitting the wooden flooring, making a crashing noise. You awake now? She questioned as she crossed her arms underneath her massive bust. She wasn't exactly mad at him because it can't be helped. He was a heavy sleeper and usually wouldn't wake up unless the loud noise goes on for a long time. She, however, wasn't a heavy sleeper. She was a light sleeper, so just the faintest noises would usually wake her up. Issei didn't respond at first, rather he chose to rub his eyes for a couple seconds to get the grogginess out of him before looking up at her. She was wearing a simple white button-up shirt that was barely containing her breasts from popping out, while he was wearing a simple black t-shirt and crimson-red boxers. I am now, he mumbled as he turned his gaze to the baby that was still crying and realizing why she kicked him off of the bed. Turning his gaze back to her, he sighs and says, "It's my turn, isn't it?" Came her response with a nod. "I'm on it," he started as he got up from the floor and approached the crib. Kurenai, upon seeing his father, began extending his little arms as if he was trying to get a hold of Issei. Hey, everything is going to be okay, Kurenai. Dad is here, so you don't need to cry anymore." He cooed as he picked up a wailing baby who didn't yet cease his crying. Issei didn't see this, but Akeno's annoyed look switched to one of happiness. She couldn't stay upset with him for long, especially when he treated their little baby boy Kurenai like that. "What seems to be the problem?" Issei asked the baby, who has yet to stop his crying. "Are you hungry? Do you need your diaper changed?" "He probably is hungry," Akeno commented from the bed. He hummed as he turned Kurenai around to check the baby's diaper, but found no stains. "Yeah, I think you're right. I don't smell anything, nor do I see any poop stains, so he is probably wanting a little midnight snack. I remember when he used to drink from these," Akeno added, causing Issei to turn around and see her looking down and massaging her tits. He was obsessed with them, always wanting to drink from them so much. "Yeah, but now there is more for me," Issei commented with a sly smirk before quickly leaving the room to avoid Akeno, possibly lecturing him about saying stuff like that in front of the kids. Issei had turned down his perverted nature a lot since high school, but he couldn't help from making some perverted comments here and there which Akeno was okay with, but that was only if their children weren't around. This also applied to cursing. She had read that children can sometimes pick up what their parents say at a young age, and she didn't want their 5-year-old daughter Akame or their little Kurenai cursing or saying perverted words at such a young age. Hyoudou household, Kuo town. 1:33 a.m. Now that I think about it, you did used to suck on your mother's boobs a little when you were younger. Issei mused as he looked down at Kurenai, who was being held in his arms. In Kurenai's itty-bitty hands was a small bottle of milk that he was currently sucking on vigorously. "Perhaps you're going to be like your cool old man. You're not cool, partner. If I recalled, you were a loser who gotten beaten up in high school." Came a deep masculine voice inside of Issei's head, stopping him from finishing his thought. "Great to see you too, Drag." Came Issei's somewhat sarcastic reply to the dragon that lived inside of the sacred gear that resided in him. Issei at first was unaware of the supernatural world, but after meeting Akeno's parents, he became aware of the supernatural world and was trained somewhat by Akeno's father in self-defense, as well as how to use his sacred gear in case anything happens and is needed to defend himself or Akeno. "I still cannot fathom how a fallen angel girl fell in love with you when you were the biggest pervert in high school. Well, actually one of the biggest perverts. Drake commented, causing a tick mark to appear on Issei's forehead. And I still can't believe I wrote a story that sold for millions about the lover of the Chaos Karma Dragon. Issei snarled. He hated when Drake brought up his perverted tendencies. Sure, he was still a pervert, but he learned that he was way too obsessed with girls back then. At this, Drake was quiet. Drake had never told any of his hosts this, since none of them really seemed to care about love, but with Issei it was different. Issei didn't really want to fight at all, nor did he want to become the strongest being in existence, he just wanted to live a peaceful life with Akeno. This caused the Red Dragon Emperor to open up about his used-to-be flame Tiamat, and how he was in love with her, and how he regretted destroying her heart. Since then, though, he never had the courage to admit it, and almost always feigned his memory of what he did to her. I regret telling you my love story. I poured my soul literally out to you, and you decide to write about it and publish it for the whole world to see. Hey, I didn't think it would sell for millions, but I guess people love stories that end in tragedies, Issei replied, not noticing the young girl approaching Issei from behind them with her two small black angel wings spread out. She had straight raven black hair like her mother, but instead of inheriting either parent's eye colors, she had red eyes. Addie, spoke the little girl as she yawned, causing Issei to turn around and look at her with a somewhat surprised look. He was surprised by multiple things. One of those was because she had her fallen angel wings out, and the other was because it was 1:35 in the morning, and she was out of bed. Akane, what are you doing up so late at night? He asked in a somewhat incredulous voice. Probably couldn't sleep, partner. Break zip it please. Issei replied, only to get a grumble of incomprehensible words. I had a nightmare, she began as she looked at the ground with a somewhat embarrassed and terrified expression on her face. I dreamt that you and mommy took me to school, but instead of coming to pick me up, you two left me there and never came back for me. Akane, he whispered softly. He had remembered when he dropped her off at daycare the first time that he got a phone call not long after him, leaving the place of her entering a tantrum, demanding for him to come back. Because of that incident, Akeno had become a full-blown stay-at-home wife, taking care of Akane and Kurenai while he works. I promise you that we won't leave you, okay? Well, we will for a couple hours, but we will be back. He didn't voice that second part since he was trying to comfort her and not make her break down into tears. But you need to go to school. Your education is important and something you need to be successful in life. Today was going to be her first day of school, and first days are always important. She needed to have a good backbone, otherwise some of the other kids might target you for petty reasons. What if I don't want to be successful in life, she complained, causing Issei to frown. All the while Kurenai was still continuing sucking on his milk, not having the slightest care for what is going on around him. What if I just want to stay home with mommy and become a powerful being like the dragon inside of you? Issei forced himself to ignore Drake's comment about Akane not mentioning him. Well, because every powerful being needed to learn the basics first. And because your mother said so. Came Akeno's voice from the kitchen doorway. She had a stern look on her face that Issei knew too well. It was one of commitment and signifying that in the end, nothing is going to change her mind. But. No, but's Akane. She started, causing Akane to fall silent. We talked about this before and the decision is final, now go back to bed. Akane, who was staring at her mother, turned to her father for help, but Issei decided it was best if he remained quiet. Seeing that his father wasn't going to come to her aid on this, she grumbled about how it wasn't fair before storming back to her room. Issei didn't get what she meant about going to school wasn't fair, but chose not to comment on that. Instead, he said, was that really necessary, Akeno? I mean, she is only 5. I didn't want to come off harsh. She admitted before directing her attention to Issei and the baby in his hands. But Akane needs to grow up and realize that she can't always rely on us being there. Akeno, she is 5 and our baby girl. I don't want her to grow up, I want her to stay young forever, so I won't have to worry about boys perving on her. He may have perved on girls when he was a teen, but that was different. It was him, so he could do that, but anyone else couldn't do that. Especially to his little girl. Issei, she hasn't made any friends at all. We agreed to not have her go to preschool, but this she has to go to. She needs to meet kids her age and not become socially awkward or incompetent. She said in a somewhat harsh voice. She wasn't trying to be the big bad mom, but she was worried for Akane. She can make friends if she wants to, she just chooses not to. He muttered the last part, but it didn't matter for she had heard it and gave him a somewhat agitated look. Issei. Okay, I get it and I understand, but it's not like she has any choice in the matter. No kids live in this neighborhood. But we can always take her to the park. Akeno interrupted, causing him to shut up. There has been plenty of times that you could have taken her to the park, but you chose to work or write for your story instead. You also could have done that, he mumbled underneath his breath. He remembered the multiple times when she had came to him telling him he was bored and the countless times of him telling her to go bother her mother or something like that. All I'm saying is that if she doesn't go to school then she won't learn any social skills at all, she will be an outcast. Hey, being an outcast isn't that bad, I mean look at me, I ended up with you so I think being an outcast is pretty good. He defended, not noticing the blush forming on Akeno's face because of the small praise. That's different and you know it, she muttered as she looked away. You at least had some social skills. True, but you shouldn't worry about that. She is just a little nervous. He reasoned before taking away the now empty bottle from Kurenai. Let's not worry about her until she gets to her teenage years. Kuo Elementary School, Kuo Academy. 6:15 a.m. Issei sighed as he came to a complete stop and parked the expedition inside of the school parking lot. Kuo Academy had changed so much since he had been here. Last time he was here when he was a student at Kuo Academy's high school. He didn't want to show Akame this, but he was also extremely nervous about being here as well. The reason why was because of the supernatural beings going to this school. Over the years Kuo Academy had changed from once an all-girls school to a co-ed school, to now an only supernatural being school. That meant supernatural beings were only allowed to attend it. He didn't know they changed it from humans and supernatural beings to just supernatural beings, but he wasn't going to question it. Okay, are you ready for your first day of school? Issei asked as he turned around to look at his daughter, only to be met by the sight of her picking her nose and digging for gold. No. Came her short and sweet response as she retracted her finger from her nose. Well, that is too bad for you, he replied as he opened his car door and quickly closed it. But do I really have to go to school? Can't I be homeschooled? She questioned as she got out of the car and rushed to her father's side, grabbing a hold of his hand. Sadly you can't. He lied, she actually could have been homeschooled, but Akeno didn't want that until she learned some social skills. Your mom thinks it is best for you to go to a normal school and meet other people. Damn, that is too bad. She muttered, causing him to stop dead in his tracks. Akame sweetie, he started as he came to a halt and got on one knee to look his daughter in the eyes. Promise me you won't ever use the word damn again, okay? Why? Because your mother doesn't want you to use that word, that is a bad word, and if you do that then daddy will be in trouble. He explained, hoping that she would just understand that and not question why. But you use the word too. She replied, causing him to internally sigh and facepalm. That is because I am an adult and adults can sometimes use bad words. He tried to reason, but this only caused her to ask more questions. Why can adults use bad words then? Because they are older. So if I was older I could use it? Yes. How old do I have to be? Where you're no longer living in our house. So I have to leave the house to use bad words. If you don't say any bad words and mention it to your mother at all, then we will go out and get ice cream for a whole week. He was tired of arguing with her, so he decided to just bribe her with ice cream. Make it 2 weeks and we have a deal. She countered, causing him to pinch his nose in exasperation. Conversations with children were way more tiring than having conversations with his friends. 2 weeks it is. Said the brown-haired male before rising to his feet and saying, now let's go check you in. Issei wasn't worried about him cracking and spilling the beans to his wife since he had kept some secrets from her, but he was worried about Akame cracking and spilling the beans. Life 1-2. Issei sighed as he watched Akame went to the front door of the elementary school. He wanted to walk her to her class if he was being honest with himself. But seeing that no other parents was doing that, he decided not to do it. Instead, he chose to stand outside and watch her from afar as his little angel entered the school. Be strong, Issei, you must be strong. She is growing up and you have to accept that, he repeated to himself several times. He didn't show it, but inside, he was crying a little. His daughter was on the path of becoming a woman and one day she will reach that. To his shock and surprise, his daughter came to a complete stop and turned around and waved at him while yelling, "Bye daddy, I love you." This immediately melted his heart, he wasn't expecting that from his daughter. I love you too," he called out as he waved back, ignoring the looks of other parents, as well as not caring if tears started to roll down his cheeks. This is pathetic, Issei. Brag, she is my little girl. Not only that, but she is my little girl. A little girl who my wife is worried about for relying on us too much. She just did something that I didn't see coming at all. If anything, I assumed she was going to turn around and run away while screaming about not wanting to go. Brag said nothing. However, after some thought about it, he sighed and said, "Now that I think about it, you're not wrong. Akame is sensitive when it comes to her emotions. However, do you really have to cry over it? Yes, I may have a dragon's blood in me, but I have human emotions. Seeing that kind of stuff makes me emotional," Issei answered with a sniffle. HMPH, that is true, but my question is this, what would you do when you see your little angel kissing a boy? I'll bucking kill them. Came the brown-haired male's response without hesitation whatsoever. I don't care if they are Volley's kids, Sarayergs, or even great bucking reds. I will kill them if they try that shit with my daughter. I would like to believe you're joking, but the way you said it makes it very hard to believe that you're joking. Drake said with a little bit of concern in his voice. I'm not, Issei started as he made his way back to his car. She's too young to be kissing boys and getting boyfriends. I'm talking about when she's in high school or middle school, idiot. Muttered the dragon in annoyance. Oh, well I mean I would prefer her not dating people throughout those years, but let's be honest. She'll most likely take after her mother and be a rebellious child. Issei answered while entering his car. Children at that age are the worst. Luckily for me, I don't have to worry about children. At least not yet. What's that? Nothing, Issei swiftly replied as he ignited the car's engine. Do you think Akeno would want some breakfast? Probably. She's a woman after all, and women love food. At this, Issei sighed. Drake could be so insensitive with his words, but this wasn't enough for Issei to hate or dislike him. In fact, Issei sometimes enjoyed the insensitive remarks because they could sometimes be pretty clever. Sometimes. Hyoudou residence. 6:47 a.m. Here comes the train, choo-choo, said the mother as she brought a spoonful of applesauce to little Kurenai's mouth. Kurenai wasted no time and opened his mouth as much as he could for the incoming train. As he clamped down on the spoon for a solid second, Akeno cheered. There you go, good job Kurenai. Abu babli wapa mama gagableri anaga, Kurenai happily replied while clapping his hands. Akeno didn't understand what Kurenai said at all, but she did pick up one word. Kurenai, she said softly as tears formed in her eyes. Did you just say what I think you said? Did you just say, mama? She was really hoping that she didn't hear wrong and that her little baby had just said his first word. Kurenai, however, didn't respond to his mother. Instead, his face became blank and unreadable as if he was contemplating. Burrp. Out of nowhere, he burped. Akeno frowned at this. She was somewhat disappointed that he didn't say what she was hoping for. But not long after, he started giggling. I can't stay upset when he is making a face like that. She thought to herself as a smile replaced her frown. His face was cute, just as cute as his giggles. Ring ring ring. The blare of her phone pulled her out of her thoughts on Kurenai. Getting up from her chair, she quickly made her way to the counter and grabbed her phone. It was Issei. Pressing the green button, she put the phone to her ear and said to him, hello sweetie. I trusted you dropped a came off at school. Yes dear, his reply came with a small sigh. You wouldn't believe this, but she did something unexpected. Really? What did she do? A curious expression formed on Akeno's face as she returned to Kurenai. As she sat down, she picked up the small baby spoon, scooped up some more applesauce, and resumed feeding him. This time, she allowed him to guide her hand. Well, just as she was about to enter the school, she turned around and waved me goodbye. It was so strange, I guess you could say it was supernatural. At this, Akeno groaned loudly. The one thing she loved and hated about Issei was him and his dad jokes. All the while Issei laughed like a madman, finding what he said to be hilarious. Issei, I hate you sometimes. You know that. I love you too. Anyways, yeah. I didn't see that coming at all because it was, well, you know her. Akeno couldn't help but smile a little at his smooth and charming reply. This was one of the things she loved about him. No matter what it was, he would always seem to find a way to make her smile. So what you're saying is that Akame grew up in the matter of a few hours and we shouldn't expect a call from the school. Akeno mused with a hint of mischief in her voice Issei knew too well. Well, I didn't say that, he murmured to the point where it was almost inaudible. But what I'm saying is that it was so unexpected and cute that it reduced me to tears. Akeno didn't respond at first for multiple reasons. One reason was that she was currently wiping some of the mess off Kurenai's face, since his hand-to-mouth coordination wasn't the greatest, while the other reason was because she was shocked that her husband cried in public. Issei, you're not lying to me, are you? She finally asked. Akeno, I shit you not. Language, Issei. Kurenai could have heard that Akeno sternly stated. She didn't care if he was talking through the phone or not, Kurenai was right in front of her and she didn't want to risk her baby learning that word. After a couple seconds of silence, Issei continued, as I was saying, I'm not lying. Our baby girl basically grew up. HMPH. Well, that is good to hear, but besides that, what are you doing? Are you on your way home? She asked as she continued to help Kurenai feed himself, enjoying the small indecipherable words he said after each bite. Yeah, I'm on my way home with breakfast. I decided to stop by McDonald's and get a breakfast meal for us, Issei answered cheerfully, not aware of the frown that appeared on Akeno's face. Issei, I told you that I don't want to get food from there, her whine caused Issei to frown. I could get fat if I eat from there. She didn't see it, but she did hear Issei's palm hitting his face. Hard. Akeno, he started while pinching his nose. You're 29 years old and look like you're in your early 20s. Not to mention that you and I both have hundreds upon hundreds of years to live. Do you honestly think I care if you gain some weight? This isn't just about you, Issei. This is also about me. She stated with traces of anger in her voice. I don't want to become the fat wife with a skinny husband. Akeno, Issei interrupted, I only got you 3 pancakes and a hash brown. I seriously doubt you will get fat over that. He knew Akeno was a little self-conscious about herself, but sometimes she could be a little too self-conscious. That's how it always starts out, she practically yelled. Ignoring the sigh coming from him, she continued, first it's just 1 meal which is fine, but then it becomes 2 meals then 3, and before I know it, we're having it as breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I have a simple solution to this then, his voice was devoid of all emotions. Just simply don't eat it. If you're that concerned about it then don't eat it. I'll eat it then. Akeno bit her lip. She wanted to say that she was okay with that, but she also didn't want to make herself breakfast, especially after Issei already bought her some food. Now hold on, Issei, maybe I was a little irrational with what I said. That's an understatement if you ask me. He murmured. But maybe I could just have the pancakes. I don't really want the hash brown. She finished ignoring Issei's little snipe. That's fine by me. It's not like I wanted to get you a hash brown anyways. He joked in a somewhat sarcastic voice. At this, she giggled. She knew he was just messing around at this point and was just trying to rile her up, but she wouldn't fall into his trap. At least not this time. Well, I'm glad to know you thought about me. It means the world to me that you for once thought about me. She countered with a mischievous grin on her face. Hey, I think about you, he cried out, causing her grin to get slightly wider. The first thing I thought about after dropping off Akane was getting breakfast for you. Sure it was. Akeno started as she fed Kurenai the last of his breakfast. She didn't see this, but she was pretty sure he was falling for her trap. It was I literally asked Drake if I should get you some breakfast, he defended. Thinking that Akeno was somewhat upset with him for some petty reason. Issei came her sweet and angelic voice that made him feel like jelly. Yes? He weakly questioned. He felt like he was in trouble for some reason, even though her voice was like music to his ears. I think you're a great dad and a great husband. That melted his heart, the way she had said it was like a hot knife cutting through butter. Well, I think you're an excellent mother and one beautiful lady that I'm lucky to have. Akeno couldn't help from giggling. Hearing his honest thoughts about her was probably one of the greatest things to hear. Careful there, Issei, she teasingly warned. Keep saying stuff like that and I might have to ravage you. She felt a little hot saying that in front of Kurenai. The thought of jumping at him and having sex with him did excite her quite a bit. Issei was quiet hearing this. He didn't know how to respond at all. Well, he did. He just didn't know what he wanted. On one hand he wanted to eat his breakfast because he was hungry, but on the other hand, he wanted to have sex with Akeno, since it had been a good while since they made some pancakes. What about Kurenai? He questioned. He doubted that Akeno would want to have sex with him if Kurenai. He'll be back in his crib by the time you get home. She stated, causing Issei's mind to go blank once again and consider his options. I'm going to go. I can't concentrate on the road like this. He said before abruptly ending the call, preventing her from saying anything to him. Akeno frowned at first, he didn't even say a goodbye to her. However, this frown was soon replaced by a somewhat evil smile. He didn't say he would be against having some fun, and this would be the first time without worrying about the kids. Hyoudou residence. 6:59 a.m. Akeno, I'm home, Issei loudly greeted, not even caring if he accidentally woke his neighbors. I'm in the kitchen, she greeted back. Issei didn't reply at all, but he did take note of her reply, which made him wonder where Kurenai was at. Sighing, he made his way to the kitchen, placing the bag of food on the dining table as he walked past it. Upon turning the corner and entering the kitchen, he was welcomed by a rather beautiful sight that could have possibly blinded him. Leaning against one of the many counters was Akeno. She was wearing a simple green tank top that hugged her mounds and revealed a little bit of her cleavage. Accompanying this was some very short shorts. An image of her younger self wearing something like this crossed his mind and he couldn't help forming a perverted grin. She looked just as beautiful as she was back then. Issei, are you thinking of something lecherous? She questioned with a sultry and silky voice that could charm any man. Yes, he meekly responded as he ogled her, not even caring about the food anymore. Breakfast could wait until after he had some fun time with his lovely wife. Is it something like ripping these clothes off of me? She mused as she wagged a taunting finger at him. Issei slowly started to make his way over to her, causing her to smirk a little. I want to do more than just rip those clothes off of you. Giggling, she replied, oh, like what? Do you want to bend me over right here and have your way with me? Do you want to suck on my tits until there is no milk left? Or do you want to impregnate me again? Issei didn't say anything in response, but he could feel himself getting excited. I hate to be the hawk blocker, Drake interrupted in a somewhat annoyed and apologetic tone, ruining the mood for Akeno and Issei. But your friend Azazel is about to ring your doorbell. Issei groaned. I swear this better be a. Ding dong ding dong. Akeno couldn't stop herself from giggling at seeing her upset husband. That's a shame, but maybe next time we could do it. I am a woman and I do need my needs. The lick of her lips didn't go unnoticed by Issei. He saw her licking her soft, plump and luscious lips right before she walked past him. I am beginning to wonder who the actual pervert is between the two of you is. Drake murmured as Issei made his front door, ignoring the second ring of the doorbell. I mean, sure you were a pervert and a loser in high school, but look at her. It hasn't even been 2 hours since you dropped Akame off at school and she is already trying to get pregnant with another child. She wasn't trying to get pregnant again. She was just, talking dirty and stuff. Issei defended, only to earn a sigh from the dragon. Sure she was. Now let's be honest with ourselves. She is 29 years old and has a long time to live, that means. Hey, I said she was just talking dirty and shit she was just getting in the mood and shit. If only Akeno could hear your vulgarity. If she heard you right now I bet she would beat the crap out of you. Issei simply laughed as he reached the door. PFFT, do you actually believe that she could beat the crap out of me? Yes. Was his instant response, causing Issei to scowl slightly. You may consider yourself the alpha of the relationship, but in all honesty, it is Akeno who is the alpha. For she holds the whip. Literally. We'll continue this later. With that said, Issei tuned out Drake's laughter and opened the door to see a tall man. On his face was what Issei would consider an evil grin. The man appeared to be in his mid-20s with a somewhat slim to average build. He had black hair with golden bangs and a black goatee. His eyes held the same color of an amethyst. Azazel, what can I do for you? And why are you sporting that stupid grin? Issei questioned while still holding the door, not even bothered to invite the man in. Issei, you wound me, Azazel exclaimed. His grin never wavered. Can't I just come by and chat with my favorite dragon, as well as perhaps have some breakfast with him? Issei peered over Azazel's shoulder to see if he could spot his silver-haired friend, but the only person he saw was his neighbor who was just leaving their house to do their daily run. I thought Volley was your favorite dragon. Issei countered with his own smirk that rivaled Azazel's. Plus, you could have just called if you wanted to talk. Let's be honest with each other, Azazel started with a somewhat serious expression on his face. Would you seriously pick up if I called you? Because I doubt you would have answered. He does have a point there, Drake quietly added, causing Issei to scowl slightly. He didn't want to agree with Azazel or Drake, but the truth was he would have ignored the call entirely. Whatever. What is it you wanted to talk about? Issei demanded as he moved to the side, allowing Azazel to enter. Well, nothing much really. Just wondering how you've been and stuff. Came Azazel's cryptic reply. Issei clicked his tongue in annoyance hearing this. He didn't want to play games and that's exactly what this damned fallen angel was doing. I thought we were being honest with each other. Issei commented, causing Azazel to smirk somewhat evilly. Oh, but that was just for that topic. Issei, dear, are you going to eat your food or not? If not, I'm going to put it in the fridge, Akeno yelled from the dining room, drowning out Azazel's voice. Don't have any food, you say? Issei was sure Azazel's smirk got bigger. And this did somewhat annoy him since this was Azazel, and Azazel can be an ass sometimes. Yes, at least not for people who aren't honest with me. Issei barked, causing Azazel to chuckle. Very well, I'll tell you what I came here to talk about. Azazel started as he took a seat on the couch. The fallen angels are about to be done making their own resurrection system, but we need some power, or to be specific, we need someone to jumpstart the system by flooding it with power. And you just get one of the top 10 strongest beings to help you, like Officer Great Red. Issei really didn't want to get involved with this kind of work due to him not being a huge fan of the supernatural stuff. Sure, he was aware of it and talked to supernatural beings on a daily basis, but that didn't mean he enjoyed those encounters. No. Instantly replied the fallen leader. Well, I mean we could, but that would take a lot more time than just asking you. Plus think about the lives you can save. Like Akeno's mother and your own parents. Now, this got Issei's attention. He may not care for the supernatural world that much, but he did care for his mom and dad, as well as Akeno's mom. You're telling me that we'll reincarnate those three if… Ring 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 ring. Issei sighed as he pulled out his phone. He was starting to get annoyed with everyone deciding to interrupt him at 7 in the morning. However, the annoyance didn't last long when he saw that the caller was Akeno's mother. Accepting the call, he was greeted by his mother-in-law. Hello Issei, how are you? I'm doing good, Mrs. Himejima. I'm just talking to Azazel about some stuff, Issei answered as he signaled Azazel to give him a minute, who in response just nodded. Oh, is it about the reincarnation system? Mrs. Himejima questions, which made Issei sign. He wasn't mad that she found out, but he just didn't know what to say really. I'm guessing Barakiel told you? He mused. At this, Mrs. Himejima smiled. Like that big teddy bear could hide anything from me. Issei had to put his hand over his mouth in an attempt to stifle his giggles. The thought of his father-in-law being tortured for the information was a funny sight. Anyways, yes, Azazel is talking about it, it's just I don't know if I'm going to do it or not. Issei began with a serious expression taking form on his face. Like, I think it's a good idea, but what if I accidentally overload the system and end up destroying it? You sound like Akeno when she first started dating you, Mrs. Himejima commented with a small smile. She was always worried about that stuff. Issei waited patiently thinking she would continue, but after several seconds he spoke. Well, what does that have to do with the situation now? All I'm saying is that you need to stop worrying and just give it a try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. No one will blame you if you try. Issei had to fend off his manly tears, the way she spoke to him was one a mother would talk to their child. Her voice was filled with comfort and love as well as support. I guess there is no harm in just trying, he stated as he finished reining in his emotions. Yeah, I guess I can give it a shot. That's the spirit of my son. Life 1-3. Issei, be a little careful, you almost hit that car just now, Akeno warned Issei as he took his foot off of the brakes and began to move the car forward once again in order to pick up Akame. I was being careful, hence why I stepped on the brakes when they suddenly came to a stop. Issei coolly replied. Only to earn himself a somewhat annoyed look from his wife. After allowing a couple seconds of silence to pass, Akeno started, anyways, I was wondering how do you think Akame did on her first day? Issei hummed as he scratched his chin with one hand while keeping the other on the wheel. If I had to say, I would think she did pretty well. I mean, I'm pretty sure the first day is just, orientation and seeing what you know, right? I guess. It's been a long time since we went to school. Akeno answered with uncertainty in her voice. It's been a while since we did a lot of things. Issei slyly commented with a smug grin. Oh, and what do you mean by that, dear? Akeno sweetly asked with a lovely smile. To anyone else, they would think Akeno was just showing affection. But to Issei, he knew that she was telling him to be careful about what he says since Kurenai is at the back seat. I mean like the last time you cocooned me. He answered as his grin got slightly bigger. At this, Akeno's face became scarlet red. She immediately looked away from him to where he could no longer see her face and stayed there. She was expecting something perverted since that's the type of things he would usually say at times like this. Nothing to say? Issei asked teasingly. If I remember correctly, I believe I said that I was in love with an angel the moment you showed me those wings of yours. Issei, she spoke softly, still not daring to look at him. She remembered that night very well, but she was surprised as Issei didn't have the best of memory. Yeah, I think I said that, and then you tackled me to the ground and wrapped your lovely wings around me. He continued as he glanced over at Akeno, only to see her turn away the moment she peeked at him. Then after that who the fuck I mean frick is that kid? Issei stopped abruptly upon seeing Akame standing next to two silver-haired kids, one of them being a boy. Akeno, who was pulled out of the trip down memory lane, first scowled at Issei for nearly cursing, but also followed his gaze to see the side as well. Akeno didn't say anything, but then she smiled. And it wasn't a loving smile. It was a smile full of evil and mischief. A smile she wore whenever she saw an opportunity. With a shrug, she said, I don't know, but if I had to guess, I believe they are Vali's and Zenovia's kids. They do look like him. Well, at least the boy looks like Vali. Issei shifted in his seat as he narrowed his eyes at the two children. After a good second or two, he said, I thought they had blue hair. Akeno rolled her eyes hearing this was Issei's infamous forgetful mind that she knew too well. Anyways, I'm fine with Akame being friends with his daughter, but that pretty boy that's on the rise is a big no-no, Issei declared as they pulled up closer to where Akame was, who was still unaware of her parents being there since she was too busy talking to her new friends. Pretty boy on the rise. Akeno parroted, not sure about what he meant. Yes, I mean look at Vali. That guy could be a model. That's pretty gay if you think about it, just saying. Drake quipped. So I'm pretty sure that spawn of his will be a pretty boy too, I don't need that breaking my little angel's heart. Issei glared at the child with what would be considered divine hatred. Before Akeno could say anything, Issei parked the car and exited it. What are you doing? She hissed as a car behind them honked at them. I'm going to go tell that punk to stay away from Akame. Issei then marched his way over to Akame, not even noticing that the person who was behind them was none other than Vali. Vali, who was keeping watch, soon realized what was about to go down and quickly parked his car. He was a father of a daughter as well, and he didn't want any boys touching his baby girl. However, he couldn't allow Issei to do what he was thinking, so he beelined it to Issei and did what any man would do to prevent someone from possibly hurting their kids. He tackled Issei down to the cement while shouting, I understand your reasoning, but stay away from him. Parents, teachers, and kids all turned their heads to the sound of the commotion and were in shock when they saw. It was their very first day at school. Adult brawling against another adult was the last thing they had in mind. Issei Akeno cried out in shock. On one hand, she was kind of wanting Issei to kick Volley's ass to show he was the stronger Dragon Emperor, but on the other hand, she was completely embarrassed. This was not how she wanted Akame's first day to be. "Keep your son away from my daughter," Issei yelled as he flipped himself around and grappled Volley in an attempt to put him in a headlock. "Keep your daughter away from my son," Volley yelled back as he slipped out of Issei's headlock and pushed his face onto the ground as if he was trying to smear it. Meanwhile, both dragons inside of them. "Pin him, Issei, you need to pin him and force him into a yield. Don't let him put you on your ass, put your weight on him and keep him underneath you." Using his left hand, Issei punched Volley in the ribs. Due to its sheer amount of force, it sent Volley flying. Rolling over, Issei watched as Volley caught himself in mid-flight and landed on his feet rather than his butt. Issei quickly jumped to his feet, ignoring the cries of parents and teachers, telling the two of them to stop. Meanwhile, kids stared in awe. They were not sure this was really happening and assumed it was just a movie or a dream. However, before either dads could trade more blows, a huge firewall sprung up in between them. Turning their heads, both males were met by the sight of a beautiful woman with long golden hair and golden eyes. She was sporting a black business suit that raised her HighSchool appeal. Sprouting out from her head were two fluffy fox-like ears, and from her lower back were 9 soft and majestic-looking tails. "Issei, Hyoudou and Volley Lucifer, stop fighting on school ground this instant," the woman yelled, causing both Dragon Emperor to lower their fighting stances. At least to an extent. Seeing that they didn't fully lower their stances made her frown a little. She had to deal with kids squabbling about and using their powers on one another, but two fully grown adults fighting was something else entirely, especially when the fully grown adults were these two. "You both are fully grown adults. You two should be setting the example for the children, especially since you two are influential figures." At this, Issei released a sigh as he released his dominating aura and guard. He wasn't going to apologize to Volley, but he will admit he was in the wrong. Not as much as Volley, but still in the wrong. Volley did the same as Issei and just shoved his hands in his pockets. "My apologies, Yusaka. I was just worried he was going to pick on Xerxes and Valentina." Yusaka didn't say anything in response to Volley's apology. She instead just stared at the two for a good couple of seconds before dispersing the flames. "HMPH. Akame, let's go," Issei said as he looked at his daughter, who had yet to move from her spot. He didn't want to look back at Akeno, but he could tell her eyes were on him. He wanted to believe that she was going to praise him for what he did, but if he was being honest with himself, then he knew that once he returned to the car he was going to get an earful. As Akame and Issei started to make their way to their car, Volley called out to him, "Issei, next time you come down to the bar, it's on the house." "That punch was a good one and something I missed." "That tackle was pretty good if I'm being honest," Issei responded, not even noticing people doing a spit take. "We should hit the ring one of these days and see who's the stronger one. It's been a while." "It has," was all Volley said. Upon entering the car, Issei was greeted by an angry-looking Akeno. His assumption about what was going to happen was right, and he couldn't help from cursing himself as he closed the door. "Mommy, I made some friends," Akame declared, unaware of the scowl on her mother's face. "That's great to hear, but Mommy has to scold Daddy for the bad thing he did just now," Akeno replied while keeping her gaze on Issei. "In my defense, he started it," Issei said as he started to drive. He refused to look at Akeno out of fear. "Issei, I love you with all my heart, but what were you thinking? What were you even going to do? He is just 6 years old, and from my perspective, it looked like you were going to attack him." Issei was quiet at first, but eventually, he said, "I was just going to tell him to stay away from Akame. She doesn't need any boyfriends. But Xerxes and Valentina didn't have anyone to play with, so I decided to go be friends with them." Akame interrupted with a serious but cute expression on her face. "Akame," Issei started as he pinched his nose bridge. "You can be friends with Valentina, but Xerxes isn't someone you should hang out with. He needs guy friends. You know, friends that are boys." "There is nothing wrong with her having any boyfriends," Akeno stated as she crossed her arms under her bust, causing them to jiggle. "You're just being a paranoid dad thinking that things might happen." "Yeah, I like Xerxes, and I want him to be my boyfriend," Akame announced proudly, causing Issei to nearly pass out. The one thing he never wanted to hear from his little angel was that sentence. "Anyways, you're going to call Volley tonight and apologize for how you acted," Akeno practically commanded after a couple seconds of silence. But any words that Issei had to say died in his mouth when Akeno gave him the look. It was that look that was telling him to correct yourself or else. "Fine." He yielded as he reverted his eyes back to the road, no longer wanting to argue. "So what was it like, Akame? Did you enjoy your first day?" Issei asked in an attempt to change the subject as well as the mood. Looking away from Kurenai, Akame said. It was great, I made a lot of friends during recess. Xerxes offered to bring in some of his toys to play with as well. Why did he offer to do that? Akeno questioned as she looked up at the rearview mirror to see Akame poking Kurenai, who was slowly drifting off to sleep. Yeah, why did he offer to do that? Issei parroted, but with a bit of suspicion in his voice. Akeno playfully slapped him for this and mouthed the word stop. Well, it's because we were playing inside and there wasn't a lot of toys for everyone to play with, so we had to share most of them. Akame answered as she ceased her activity with her baby brother. Well, that's very kind of him. Akeno said with a smile as she averted her eyes forward. Hey, daddy? Akame questioned after a couple minutes of silence. Yes, my little angel. Issei answered with a semi-sweet and semi-playful voice while keeping his eyes on the road. Are we still getting ice cream like you promised? At this, Issei sweat dropped. He could feel Akeno's gaze back on him and knew that he was going to be in trouble again. He knew that Akeno wanted Akame and Kurenai to eat healthy, so ice cream was like a once every 2 weeks kind of thing. Why did he promise you to get ice cream, Akame? Akeno sweetly questioned as she continued to stare at the side of Issei's head. I promised her that if she made some friends we would stop at her favorite ice cream parlor as a reward for making friends. Issei lied. He was hoping that Akame would just keep her mouth shut and let him do the talking, since he doubted that she could pull off the lie. It wasn't because he didn't trust her, but it was more of because Akeno is the interrogator and Akeno has a way of extracting information. Yeah. Akame agreed. She had almost slipped up and said the truth, but she remembered what was said this morning. Akeno eyed Issei for what seemed like a solid minute, attempting to find any traces of deceit, but found none due to him having a stone face. Sighing, she said, very well, I guess it would be okay for us to stop by the ice cream parlor. The ice cream party, Akame cheered as she danced in her seat, waking up Kurenai in the process. Issei, who watched through the rearview mirror, couldn't stop himself from giggling. Akame looked so happy and seeing her this excited made him full of life. Issei couldn't help from smiling as he carried Kurenai in his arms and entered the drippity ice cream with his family. He wasn't the biggest of fans for ice cream, but this parlor was an exception. Their vanilla-flavored ice cream was the best in his opinion, especially when they cover it with some hard chocolate and sprinkles. Upon entering the place, the female standing at the counter greeted them with beaming smile and said, "Welcome to the drippity ice cream, home to the famous ice cream shuffle. How may I help you?" Issei didn't respond to the young worker at first. Instead, he glanced over at Akeno and spoke in a low tone. "Do you want me to order, or do you want to order?" Akeno replied as she contemplated her answer for a solid second or two before just shrugging. "You can go ahead and order, I'll just find us a place to sit and keep an eye on the kids." "Okay," was all Issei said in response, as he carefully handed Kurenai to Akeno, who delicately lifted the boy from his father's arms. "Daddy, can I come too? I want to give my order," Akame nearly begged as she pulled on Issei's pants. Issei shot Akeno a look, who gave him a nod of approval. With a smile, he bent down and surprised Akame by picking her up while saying, "Of course you can. Tell you what, I'll even let you place my order. You do remember it, right?" "Of course," she replied energetically as Issei began to make his way to the counter, avoiding the stares he received from the people who were already sitting down and eating. It might have been a little weird for him to pick her up due to her age, but he didn't care. Personally, he loved when he held Akame in his arms. "Okay, tell the nice lady what you want to get," Issei said as he looked at Akame, who was busy peering over the young lady's shoulder to see all the different kinds of ice cream. "Roger that," Akame affirmed as her eyes focused on the woman before them. "I want 2 scoops of vanilla mixed with chocolate chips, along with 1 scoop covered in caramel. On top of that, I would like for it to be coated with chocolate chips and sprinkles along with some cherries." Issei couldn't help from smiling awkwardly. This was not what he had in mind, nor was this type of ice cream he got her when they did go here. A thought entered his mind. What the hell is she ordering? It's like she is wanting cavities or something. Luckily for him, though, the woman didn't look surprised or anything. Instead, she just responded with a nod. "Okay, and what would you like?" "I'm letting her place my order," he replied as he nudged his head over to Akame. "But for the wife we'll just get 2 scoops of vanilla coated with hard chocolate, and for the little goofball 1 scoop of vanilla." "Okay then, so what are you getting for your dad?" the woman asked as she looked at Akame. "He wants the ice cream shuffle, but with whipped cream and cherries on top," Akame loudly declared, gaining the attention of the patrons. Issei could hear some people snickering, and he could tell that some were smiling, enjoying Akame's behavior, finding it to be amusing. "Understood, your ice cream will be made in less than 3 minutes," the woman said as she gave them a smile. "Whenever you're done we'll give you the bill." "Got it," Issei replied as he returned the smile with his own before turning around and making his way over to where Akeno sat with Kurenai. Ice cream parlors never cease to amaze me. Especially with their names. remember that one place? I think it was called I Scream It You Cream It. Drake said with amusement in his voice. It's I cream it, you scream it, Issei answered. He didn't want to admit it, but whenever he thought of the place perverted thoughts entered his mind. Definitely fascinating. I bet Akeno screamed it when you creamed her. Drake quipped before laughing at his own joke. Are you okay? You seem different, it's like you got laid or something. Issei said with a smirk forming on his face. I have never been better. Finally, after years of doing nothing but living a simple life, we'll finally get to duel the White Dragon Emperor. Drake proudly declared. Issei was sure that Drake was crying, but he decided not to comment on it. Whatever, it's not that big of a deal. Ignoring the rant from the dragon, Issei plopped Akame onto a chair next to Kurenai before taking his seat next to Akeno. You know this won't be cheap, right? Akeno muttered as she leaned into Issei. It's fine, it's for Akame, and as long as she is happy then does it really matter? Issei coolly responded as he glanced over at Akeno only to see a small tint of red on her cheeks. Issei. She whispered into his ear. I think it's really hot when you act like this. But that said, she licked his ear. Issei was able to stifle the eep that would have come out of his mouth, but he couldn't prevent the reddening of his cheeks as his mind formed perverted thoughts. Like I said, I truly do wonder who the pervert is between you two. Drake said to himself as he watched the scene play out. Akeno, you shouldn't talk like this in front of the kids. He replied in a low tone loud enough for only her to hear. I know, but maybe I just want to have you inside of me tonight. She said in a hushed tone that made his red cheeks turn even redder. He wouldn't say this, but he was liking her straightforwardness. Sometimes it could be hell of hot, and this was one of those moments. Akeno, he mumbled, not sure how to respond as he looked at Akame, who was busy trying to play patty cake with Kurenai. It looks like I still got it. She said between giggles before pressing her lips onto Issei's cheek. What? Akame cluelessly asked as she tilted her head and looked at the two of them while still managing to play patty cake with Kurenai, or at the very least attempting to play. Nothing, just a joke, that's all. Issei lied while trying to keep a straight face but couldn't because of Akeno's soft plump lips on his cheek. What's the joke? She asked. It's a joke that you don't need to hear. Akeno firmly stated as she pulled her lips away from Issei's face with her lips slightly curved upwards. But I want to hear the joke, Akame protested as she ceased playing with Kurenai and gave her parents her undivided attention. It's a bad joke and one that you'll not find funny, Issei said as he crossed his arms. He doubted that Akame would give up on asking so many questions, but a man could hope. But. Nah, no buts, no cuts, and no coconuts, Akeno teasing stated as she wagged her finger side to side. At this, Akame huffed and puffed her cheeks rather cutely while crossing her arms. Looking away from her parents, she mumbled, it's not fair. I want to hear the joke too. Hey, Issei started as he gently rubbed Akame's hair. Akame didn't dare to look at him though. Instead, she just huffed again in hopes to make him submit to her will. Akame, trust me on this, the joke was awful. Like my jokes are up here and your mom's jokes are way down here. He explained as he raised a hand high above his head before lowering it to where he was touching the floor. Issei Akeno pouted, feeling a little hurt. She didn't find her jokes to be bad at all. In fact, she found them to be hilarious most of the time. I know they can be bad, but still I just want to hear the joke, you know. Akame said as she finally looked at her father, who was gently running his fingers through her hair. Akame, Akeno said with an even more hurt expression on her face. She had not expected that to come out of Akame's lips at all. Trust me, I'm doing you a favor, Issei began, but was stopped mid-sentence by Akeno pinching his cheek. Hard. HMPH, that's for being rude, Akeno said with an expression that looked cuter than upset. Issei rubbed his now reddened cheek with a somewhat annoyed expression, but that didn't last long when he heard Akame's giggles. Daddy's in trouble, daddy's in trouble. Oh, you're going to get it now, here comes the tickle monster. Issei couldn't help from smiling as Akame squealed and giggled uncontrollably as his hands ran across her body in a wild manner. He took notice of people turning their heads his way, but he honestly couldn't be bothered. Hearing Akame laugh like this made him the happiest parent in the world. You may be an idiot sometimes as well as a pervert, but you're my perverted idiot. Akeno said to herself with a smile as she watched the scene playing. Life 1-4. Issei couldn't help from grinning like a madman. He was currently downstairs watching a show in what his loving wife called the man cave. Which she wasn't exactly wrong since it was full of things you would expect only guys to get. He is getting too emotional. He should just end it before the man gets a second wind. Drake commented in a serious tone as the two watched this popular show that was full of medieval action. He isn't going to, Issei started, but stopped when the big man who was down suddenly got a second wind. You were saying? Drake said in a somewhat smug tone. Drake had seen countless fights in his lifetimes and in his opinion, believed that a fight would never ever truly be over until their opponent was dead. Issei didn't say anything in response. He instead got up from the couch he was on, walked over to his mini fridge and looked for some alcohol. He was hoping for the Red Viper to win the fight against the Mountain for multiple reasons, but like always Game of Thrones decided to play with his emotions. Seeing that he had no alcohol, he furrowed his brows. He really needed a drink after that, but he didn't want to go upstairs because he doubted he would be able to come back down. With a sigh, he decided to go upstairs and check their garage refrigerator where they kept most of their beverages. He pressed pause on the TV remote before leaving, that way he wouldn't miss the epic intro that he would badly hum along to. Upon opening the basement door, Issei was greeted by the sight of Akame standing in the middle of their living room, staring at the flat-screen TV that was playing what he believed a kid's show. On the couch behind her was an amused Akeno who couldn't even hide her smile. Closing the basement door behind him, Issei felt Akeno's gaze land on him and knew it was only a matter of time before she. Issei, I'm hungry, Akeno said sweetly with a smile still on her face. It's only been like an hour though since we got back from the ice cream parlor. He replied while turning around to face her. He couldn't stop himself from cursing mentally. He knew this was going to happen or something along these lines, but he was hoping that it would have happened later rather than now. It's actually been several hours, sweetie. Akeno corrected. He hummed in response. He actually didn't know it had been that long, but he assumed it had only been an hour. How's your show going, Akame? It's going well, Akame cheerfully declared as she glanced over at her father. Suddenly her stomach began to rumble loud enough for everyone to hear. It seems I'm not the only one hungry, Akeno said in between giggles. Issei frowned mentally. He may have been somewhat hungry, but that didn't mean he wanted to make something. I'll see what we have to make, but no promises, Issei said in response before turning around and walking towards the kitchen and garage. Thank you, Issei, Akeno cheerfully responded as she shifted into a more comfortable position. We're not really going to stop and make some food, right? I mean, at least not for them. Drake asked Issei. Why not? I mean, Akeno makes me food all the time. Issei replied. He may not have wanted to make food, but he was going to probably do it since Akeno does go out of her way sometimes to make him food, even when he doesn't ask. But Game of Thrones. We have to find out if Tyrion dies or not, Drake protested. He wasn't going to admit it, but he did find the show to be very interesting. He liked the lies and deceit along with the fights. They would never kill Tyrion off, Issei affirmed. At least I think they wouldn't. We thought that with Lord Stark, and look what happened to him. Drake pointed out. Issei couldn't help from having his lips move slightly downward. He did believe that Lord Stark was going to be okay, but Game of Thrones said otherwise. Whatever. So did you find anything to eat? Akeno asked as she wrapped her arms around Issei and pressed her breasts against his back. Issei, who didn't expect nor sense Akeno sneaking up at him at all, released a womanly shriek of surprise. Akeno, he said after quickly compassing himself and tuning out Drake. Don't do that, I nearly died from a heart attack just there. I'm sorry, but I just couldn't help it, Akeno said in between giggles. Issei didn't show this, but he had a worried expression. It wasn't what she said that worried him, but it was how she said it. Akeno, he started but stopped when she suddenly bit down on his neck. She didn't bite down on it to the point to where she drew blood, but she did bite in a way to where it sent a sensation through his body. Issei, we should do it tonight. She whispered huskily into his ear before licking it. Issei at this point froze completely. He didn't know what to say or think. He wanted to agree since it had been a good while since they had Hex, but he also didn't want to potentially get caught by Akame or Kurenai. Akeno, but what about the kids? What if they hear us, or what if Akame has a nightmare and walks in on us? Issei questioned as he tried to keep his lust in check. The way she was nibbling on his ear and neck was making it very hard for him. You'll just have to put a gag on me then to prevent me from screaming. She simply stated. At this point, Issei shut down. His brain and heart had ceased to work and he needed to be brought back to life. He was expecting a mature response, not that type of response. Akeno, he mumbled. He didn't know really what to do in this situation, let alone what to do later. He had originally planned on watching Game of Thrones and possibly falling asleep in the man cave, but now he was unsure if he wanted to even do that. Issei, I just want to show you my love and how much I appreciate you, Akeno said with a small smile as she rested her head on him, ceasing the activities she was doing earlier. Issei didn't say anything in response. Instead, he opted to remain quiet and listen to what she had to say. I know sometimes we don't get along and we have our fights, but I really do love you. You gave up so much to be with me, and I think that's possibly the nicest thing a guy has ever done for me. Issei couldn't help from looking down at the hand that was now placed over his heart. His lips started to curve slightly upwards as she soothingly rubbed his chest. After I showed you my wings, I expected you to run. I told myself that you were going to think I was a demon or something and that you would never want to be with me. However, that morning you didn't leave. You didn't try to leave me, instead, you held on to me and stayed with me. I mean even I wanted to leave at that time I doubted I could, Issei stated. You did have me wrapped in your wings so I couldn't exactly ow. We're having a moment Issei, don't ruin it. Akeno declared as she let go of his cheek. Issei didn't see this, but she was smiling. Akeno did enjoy it when he was like this. One day she is going to actually pull my cheeks off. He muttered to himself as she picked up on where she left off. Everyone thought it wasn't going to work out between us. The hottest girl in Kuo Academy and the loser of Kuo Academy. Everyone talked about us and said that I could be with someone better. Someone who is athletic, hot, and not a pervert. There a point to this, because this is killing the moment for me. Issei dryly stated he didn't really want to be reminded of his high school years, since those weren't his best memories. My point is that I'm glad I ignored those comments. She said lovingly as she rubbed her cheek against his shoulder in an affectionate way. You gave up your heart and brain for me and prolonged your life just for me. I don't think most guys would have done that. I think they would have just run. Yeah, he said sheepishly. He recalled having those moments really well, and if he was being honest, he did have those thoughts. He did think about leaving her, but he didn't go through with the thought. He just couldn't since she was his first. She may have been a fallen angel, but to him, she was his first girlfriend and the first person to actually care for him besides his two friends. You know. I'm sorry that I can sometimes be a piece of shit and worry the crap out of you, but I do love you. Issei said with a small smile. Love me enough to where you'll make dinner? She asked in a playful manner. Nah, you aren't worthy of that type of love. He replied while spinning himself around to face her. Akeno in return took a step away from him and looked at him if he was some sort of cruel man. You're so mean to me Issei after all the things I do for you. Issei chuckled as he closed the small distance between the two and placed his hands around her waist. I know a couple of ways to make it up to you. He said with a smirk. Oh, and what do you have in mind? Akeno questioned with her own smirk. I was thinking maybe we go out one of these nights. He replied as one hand slowly snaked its way up to her breasts. He then began to lightly grope her breast, causing her to blush a little as he continued speaking. Hire a babysitter for the night to watch the kids while me and you just enjoy ourselves, like we used to when we were in college and whatnot. That sounds interesting, Akeno said as her hand slipped down to his crotch. She gently but firmly rubbed her hand against his private parts while still maintaining eye contact with him. Yeah. Issei hiccupped. Even though she wasn't directly rubbing his manhood, he was still getting hard. It was just how she was doing it, along with him groping her boobs. So where do we go from here? She whispered as her hand slowly started to unzip his pants. Do you want to take this to the bedroom, or should we perhaps go downstairs, or should we do it right here in the kitchen? Issei bit his lip as he felt Akeno slip her hand inside and increase the pressure. He was wanting to take her right now. Just rip off the shirt and do many things. Mommy, did daddy find out what he is making for dinner? Akane called out from the living room, snapping the couple out of their lustful moment. One of these days I believe you're just going to lose it and just going to go for it. Not caring if anyone catches you two in the act. Drake commented in an amused tone. It would be an interesting experience, Drake. Akeno said as she removed her hand from Issei's pants, earning herself a chuckle from him. Sorry Akame, we're still deciding that. I'll let you know when we decide. She then shouted back to Akame. Okay Akame's cheerful response, unaware of what was going on between her parents. One of these days that will happen. Issei stated with a sad tone. Life 1-5. Akeno let's go Issei called out as looked up the stairway before resuming his pacing. He wore a fancy black wool blend twill suit with a black vest matching it, a black dress shirt underneath it, a black tie, and black dress shoes. You really want to leave, don't you? Drake quipped with amusement clear as day in his voice. Yes. Issei immediately replied as he walked into the living room where a blonde man sat with Akame and Kurenai watching a movie. Tonight is our night where I can enjoy Akeno's voluptuous body. A night where I will finally have hex. The night of no hawk blocking. Hey, Issei, the blonde man started as he glances at him. Tell me again why I have to babysit your kids. Because I have no one else to babysit them and I promised Akeno a night out, Issei stated as he looked at the TV. And because your wife said so. That's lame. The blonde declared with a frown. Yeah, well that's life, and when you have kids, you'll call upon me to return this favor, Saji. Issei smoothly replied before walking away, leaving the blonde to mumble about his predicament. Akeno Issei called out again as he looked up at the stairs. Not long after yelling this, the sound of a door being opened and closed, followed by the sound of high heels hitting wood. I'm coming Akeno said as she appeared at the top of the stairs. It's about he started as he opened his eyes only for the words to die in his throat as he gaped at Akeno, who was wearing a crimson red dress that increased her hex appeal tremendously with crimson red high heels to match it. Holy buck. Was all Issei could say as he watched Akeno walk down the stairs. It was times like these where he wished he didn't have kids, for he would have jumped her right there and taken her then and now. It's about what? Akeno teased. Issei didn't respond, he simply stared at her, drool threatening to escape his mouth as he drank her hexy appearance in. He was only able to snap out of it when he heard her giggle and noticed that she was standing in front of him. You know it's rude and impolite to keep a lady waiting, Issei. It's about time I take you out and show you a wonderful time, like you deserve, Issei happily said, earning another giggle from her. He turned to his blonde-haired friend one more time and waved a little too enthusiastically. See you later, Saji. The blonde grumbled unintelligibly as the couple left their children in his care. So, do you really think the kids will be fast asleep by the time we get back? Akeno questioned as she looked out the window. Without a doubt. Issei answered, his eyes remaining glued to the road. Are you sure? She questioned in a serious manner. I'm positive that they both will be sleeping peacefully by the time we get back, which will allow us to do husband and wife things. He coolly replied as the car slowly came to a stop due to the red light. But what if they're not? She questioned, still not convinced that Issei's plan will work. They will, so stop worrying about them and enjoy our night out. After all, it's not like we get to do this a lot. Issei replied in the same cool manner he had spoken in previously. You're right, this is our night, I shouldn't be worrying about the small things and just enjoy our night together. Akeno stated with a smile that made Issei smile. Yeah, Issei affirmed as he gradually pressed his foot down on the pedal. It's going to be fun. We're going to have our nice fancy dinner, then see a movie, and then end it with me and you on the bed making love. At this Akeno giggled and said, you're a pervert. Yeah, I am. Issei confidently stated with a nod. But I only have perverted thoughts for you. That was really cheesy, but I loved it. Akeno stated with a giggle as she put her hand on top of Issei's hand that was resting on the armrest. Upon feeling her hand on top of his, Issei's smirk widened. I'm getting laid tonight. The FFT, snorted Drake. I doubt that. And at this, Issei's smirk lessened. Wow, thanks partner, good to know I have your support. No problem, just doing my job. Drake replied in a cheeky tone that made Issei wish he had a body so he could punch him. Hey Issei? Started his wife, causing Issei to immediately shift his attention to her. Yes, dear. He replied in a sweet-like tone, completely opposite of the tone he used when it came to talking to Drake. Do you sometimes wonder what it would be like if we were involved in the supernatural world a bit more? She asked while glancing over at him. I mean sometimes, but not a lot of times, Issei confessed as they turned left. It's just something I don't really worry about because I'm too busy worrying about you guys. Yeah, like sometimes I do wonder what it would be like, but ever since we had a Kame, I kind of just don't think about it that much. Akeno admitted with a small smile. Parenthood, it'll do that to you. Issei said with a chuckle. Ifufu, I guess it will. After getting seated at their table and placing their order, Issei couldn't help from smiling a little. Someone's in a good mood, Akeno stated with a smile of her own. Should I not be? Issei questioned before taking a small sip of his drink. He would have had alcohol, but because he was their driver he had decided not to. No, in fact, I love it when you smile. You have a handsome smile. His wife said, causing him to click his tongue before taking another sip of his drink. When you say things like that, it'll make me blush. Issei murmured as he averted his eyes away from her. Yufufufu, you're adorable Issei, Akeno said before taking a sip of her drink. And you're gorgeous. He replied as he looked her in the eye. Probably the most gorgeous girl I've ever laid my eyes upon. Probably. She said as she leaned in. Are you saying that there might be someone more beautiful than me? Well, Issei reluctantly stated as he scratched the back of his neck and avoided making eye contact with her. I mean, I'm not saying that there are many girls out there that rival you, but I'm also saying that there is a chance that there are some girls out there. Yufufufu, really? Akeno questioned in a sweet tone. Why yeah, I mean I bet there are some guys out there that surpass me in looks, right? Issei said in an attempt to justify himself. No, for I see you as the perfect man. There's no one in this world that I believe can rival you. She answered. Now you're making me feel like an asshole. He muttered with a look of annoyance. It's not too late to take back what you said. His wife said with a giggle. The night is still young and the mood is still good. Well, I can't take it all back because there is a chance I might see someone and think that they're pretty, but I can say that there's no one that'll have me look at them how I look at you. Issei stated with a serious look and tone. That wasn't the sweetest thing you've said, but it was still somewhat sweet, so I'll let you be in the clear this time. Akeno said after releasing a small huff. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.